Welcome into the Week 16 Yahoo version of the NFL Strategy Show Deeper Dive. We're going to go through each and every position here and get you ready for this weekend, all Yahoo specific. Click those links below if you haven't, $10 free. And if you're new to Yahoo, we're going to give you 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. It's that simple. It's that easy. The three of us are back. It's like we never left. Myself, Terry, and Emac with you for the next hour or so. Tyler's producing. And, you know, here's the biggest question that I have before we can even dive into this gigantic slate with so many question marks about COVID and who's in, who's out. What's the shelf life of our Christmas themed intro music? Because I really like them. And look, I'm the person who fights in the household of when to take the tree down, when to take the light. I'll keep it up for 12 months out of the year. So don't go by me by any means, but I'm enjoying it. Tyler, Jordan, the producers, they may be sick and tired of it. I get it, but I don't know what's the shelf life of something like this.
In my head, the shelf life of this is constant.
Yeah. New Year's Eve, maybe.
I walk around my house at home, and I'll be doing it here now, and I'll be doing it at my sister's house later on, just going dun, 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 just bobbing my head like that back and forth while I'm doing whatever in my house. It is perpetually stuck in my head at this point, but I do enjoy it. It's not bad.
No, I don't mind it at all. That's why I asked. I come from in a sense of I enjoy it. And look, we have some pretty cool original music, don't get me wrong. But, you know, Emac, I don't know. Are you like December 26th? Is the tree out of your house immediately and that's it?
My wife spends forever decorating. And let's just say I believe we're up to 12 of those big blue bins. They're all numbered. And she has an Excel list of what everything is in. And there's a certain order I need to bring them up. for her, and that is how Christmas is assembled and disassembled.
If you're like four boxes in, and she realizes that you brought up the third box before the second box, do you have to bring them all back down and start over again? Like, how does that work?
Sometimes I'm told to just go do something else, or assemble the Christmas village. That's usually my job.
Now, are you guys living Christmas trees, or you guys go for the fake Christmas trees? Because my parents just got the first fake one. Yeah. This is our first fake one ever, and honestly, I really like it. It's pretty nice.
You don't need to
replace.
You don't need to go out and hack down a new tree every year. It's a plastic thing in a box. You put it in the garage or storage, what have you, and good to go. Good to go.
Yeah, real quick, they're excited because they can leave it up for weeks.
Well, that's another thing too, is that it doesn't smell if you leave it up an extra month and a half. So, real quick, before we hit the quarterbacks here, what's the worst? Not the worst Christmas song. But what's the worst Christmas song to have stuck in your head for like a day or so?
Christmas rapping.
What's that?
The waitresses. Merry Christmas, think I'll be alone this year. Merry Christmas.
I know that. I know that one.
I don't know the words to it. I only know the hook. So I think of a few words here and there. That's probably it, or George Michael.
Okay.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart.
I hate that. I hate that in my head too. I'll give you that one. Terry,
give it to someone special.
What about the old "O Come All Ye Faithful"? Just because it might confuse people if you're singing that, they might not know what you're talking about.
You're out in the public. You better make sure it's known you're caroling.
Exactly. Or you might start an impromptu party. It might be a good time. Who knows?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. It can be dangerous in COVID times, but look, we still be having fun by all means. All right, let's jump into it. We'll bounce around. I'm sure there'll be a rabbit hole or 10 to pull us away, but we'll do our best to stay focused. If you're hanging with us, Merry Christmas ahead of time. Hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed here as well. So let's jump into quarterbacks, and just looking at where we have with Yahoo, there are going to be some pay up options absolutely on this slate. We're still waiting on Jalen Hurts. I can pretty much assure you that he's going to be playing. Doesn't look like Lamar Jackson will play. So now Tyler Huntley at $31 can be interesting. Let's just start there at the top, because there isn't really one spend up option. Terry, we'll start with you and kind of bounce around Emac as well. But you've got Allen, Herbert, Mahomes, Stafford is in there as well. The one guy that I am concerned about, that I'm sure both of you are interested in and are going to get to at some point, is Justin Herbert, not because of what I expect from him, but he's the one guy in all of this, including Minnesota, granted, going with Stafford, that has the blowout factor, where he could easily be up 27, 28 points at the half against Houston. And now all of a sudden the expectation of him lighting up the slate is limited significantly because they're pounding Houston into the ground.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that, I never like to speculate too much. I try and let the optimizers optimize, let my projections and the math, math out and do their thing. But at certain points, you do get concerned about that type of a thing. And yeah, going up against this Houston team, that's certainly a concern. If they're up a decent amount, how much do they throw the ball? If they're up a decent amount, do they just decide, hey, we're going to protect our asset here? 8-6, they're still chasing that playoff spot. So it's probably unlikely that he would just go out of the game and sit. But there's always that potential. If they're up enough, we could see him sit part of the fourth quarter as well. So there's a little bit of scare there. But I think just based on the numbers, based on the fact that he is one of the pricier quarterbacks on the board, but a lot of guys are in similar range. I think I would rather take the risk, get the fantasy points that I expect from him here. We're talking about a 64.7% game script adjusted pace number, which is a slight pace up for them. They're normally a 63.1, a 57.5% game script adjusted passing share. So even if they're blowing him out, you also have that factor of, if they're blowing him out, he might have already thrown 4 touchdowns for us already, 5 touchdowns for us. Good point. So who knows? So taking those couple things into account, I'm still on board with them. But yeah, that is definitely a factor.
Yeah, and sort of my take on that, he's one of my three favorite quarterbacks, and Austin Eckler is in the COVID protocol. So of course we're going to be talking about Justin Jackson. Now Eckler could get out if he's able to pull off 2 negative tests. He's one of the handful that will have been put in for a long enough time to make it back out. But it's pretty dicey that he's in there. So Jalen Guyton is also out. as well, but Keenan Allen, Mike Williams are available. You've got Jared Cook there, and then Justin Jackson does a reasonable impression of Austin Eckler that I don't think it's really going to impact Herbert a ton. They aren't necessarily a run first team by any stretch, because even when you have Eckler there, he's usually around 50, 60 yards. So they're going to go a lot to the pass anyway. So I feel relatively comfortable that that Herbert should be able to get there. The other thing that was the main thing. Awesemo has him rated an A for points and a C for value. There's not the value ratings. Those will get a little sharper once we know everybody who's out. There are really no salary restrictions today on Yahoo, and you can even work in Cooper Kupp at 41, which is the highest I can remember seeing a receiver any point this year. He's the number one on the board. We'll talk about him. Let's talk about him quick. Leads the league in every category you can think of. Okay, we're done with Cooper Kupp, but there's going to be enough discounted options that the value ratings kind of go out the window this weekend.
Yeah, and look, I think that's a great point that we all see on slates, especially with Yahoo, where if you know there's one guy, it doesn't matter if it's Jokic or if in this case it's Cooper Kupp, where if you know you're going to get to this guy as the spend up option, no matter how chalky he may be, there's going to be plenty of opportunity to save. So Emac, let's start with you and then Terry as well, because I kind of threw out Herbert. Who is the number one guy? It doesn't matter if he's right there at the top or if you're looking to find some value. Who is the number one quarterback you anticipate getting to the most?
For me, it's our guy, Eytan.
Yes.
It's going to be Jalen Hurts. I'm thinking he's going to be fine with the ankle. So the key thing about Hurts is so last week he worked over the Washington football team, 296 passing yards and a score, had 2 more rushing touchdowns, 8 carries for 38 yards. Fortunately, we didn't do any over-unders on that because I would have taken the rushing over like I always do. He wouldn't have got there, surprise, for just the 3rd time this season. But he's someone who's pretty solid there. Philadelphia right now is the 8th best record in the NFC East. They are 2 games behind Arizona. That's going to be real hard to make up with just 3 games left, but they're smack in the middle of the expanded wild card, and could be one of the leading options that could potentially get the second week, or they could be at home, depending on how things shake out and where their record ends up being. So the interesting thing about that is they must be playing to win in this one. Back in week 12, the Giants actually held Hurts in check with 129 passing yards and 3 interceptions. He did have 77 yards on 8 carries. That was a 13-7 loss. I'm not going to put a ton of stock in that one and worry about it, because we know where that the fantasy goodness is there with Hurts. Eytan, if you want to give a little flavor about what it's like to live in Philadelphia and be a Philadelphia fan, I mean, maybe another Gardner Minshew side.
I don't think anybody needs that.
No.
Live in Philadelphia, be a Philadelphia fan.
Christmas here. We're trying to give people a positive, some sort of shift, like bounce into the weekend here. I don't want to cloud anybody's holiday ahead of time. But
besides, this is a Philly guy who hates Rocky. I mean, come on, how much perspective does he really have?
I'm telling you, then not the first one. I can respect the first one as a work of art, but look, if you had, I don't know, fill in the blank, whoever it would be, ridiculous fictional character representing the great historic city of New York, Manhattan to the other boroughs, you'd be just as upset as a movie buff, both of you as movie buffs, as I would here. That's all. I don't need a fictional statue of Rocky Balboa with his arms up like that, representing my city. That's all I'm saying. That's it,
Some cities hey, look, in lieu of legendary sports heroes, some cities have to make them up. That's all right,
Yeah, look, the pivot would be the only real statue we have left since the Frazier thing was down is because of Nick Foles and Doug Peterson, who won a Super Bowl. Those guys aren't even here anymore. So that should just tell you what's going on. But as far as Hurts is concerned, I love him this weekend. And honestly, I think the conversation about what we talked about with Justin Herbert, just this concern about a blowout. Look, they're double-digit favorites against the Giants at home. Regardless of that, whatever's going on, Jalen Hurts isn't going away. And it's really difficult. This is what I love about the Eagles offense right now. It's really difficult for the Eagles to get up on anybody without Jalen Hurts being the reason. if that's on the ground or if that's on the air. And not many quarterbacks can say that. Doesn't mean he's better, more valuable, what have you. It just means these particular circumstances with Hurts, it's just really difficult. It's like what we've seen with Lamar, maybe to a lesser extent, but in years prior where he's just such a huge involvement of the offense. So I don't think you can go wrong with Hurts, especially because on the board here, $35, you're not paying up much at all for any of the guys above him, and the expectations would be there. So I love Hurts there. Is there another guy, Terry, that you were looking at, that you were identifying at the quarterback spot?
I tell you what, just looking through some of these different options, you just mentioned Lamar Jackson. He's $34. I'm always happy to take swings on him, but he's not really standing out. His projection is fine. There's nothing wrong with that spot. I expect it to be an interesting game, but just like looking at the passing percentages, we've got a game script adjusted passing of just 52.7 on them. We know Lamar as a weapon can do things with his legs and typically needs to deliver full freight for fantasy. So I don't love that option. The one at $34, or really there's two sitting next to each other on this board at $34, are Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Both of those guys at $34. I know Brady's going to be dealing shorthanded, but I think that might just kind of lean into he's going to be throwing the ball more, and I don't really care who he's throwing the ball to a lot of the time. He's still got Gronk out there. He's got some of his weapons. They're going to be limited on the ground. So I like that spot. We've got a 62.7% game script adjusted passing on them. It's a slight pace down tick, 65.4 to a 64.5. I'm not really going to sweat a 0.9 adjustment in our pace number here. So I think that's one that kind of makes sense to at least take a look at. I know it's a low total. I know they're favored by a lot, but I think there's reason to believe that Tom Brady can still deliver a decent fantasy score there. Aaron Rodgers, kind of a no-brainer. We already talked about the degree to which we expect them to be throwing the ball. We already talked about his major weapon in Devontae Adams. I love going to that combination as much as I possibly can in fantasy. And if a lot of people are flocking to that expensive Cooper Kupp play despite the price, then maybe I go to the Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams combo a few additional times there. So I think both of those guys are interesting before we drop down into like the $20 tier.
Don't forget that Green Bay is on Saturday.
Oh, that's right. I've got the whole board combined up over here. I forgot, but we can talk about that too. There's a Yahoo slate for Saturday.
Ago. Yeah,
there is. But
let me actually take those
to know about Saturday. In case anybody was going to go Baker Mayfield over Rodgers, now Terry has set you straight.
There you go.
So you've covered that.
Let me take those two games out of this board so I don't do that again.
Hey, you mentioned the $20 range, and the Giants fan, and you may know what's going on. Is it Glennon? Is it Fromm? Is it official yet?
I haven't seen it official yet. I would just expect Glennon. It seems to be that's either way. Do you really want to roster either one of these guys? To be honest,
no. But if it was, here's the thing. No, I wouldn't want to roster Glennon, but there is this small, and again, you'd have to be building a lot of rosters and playing in a large GPP. I get that type tournament here with 100, 150 roster lineups. This is not a cash lineup suggestion, nor like a single entry by any means. But if Jake Fromm were to start,
it looks like he is as of an hour ago. Sorry to cut you off. Yeah, from as of about an hour ago. So
here, just hear me out, okay? This is a small percentage, but you never know. Crazier shit happens in the NFL of all sports. But two things. One, we just saw last week the Washington football team pull somebody out who was bathing his daughter when he got the call. He wasn't even practicing on the practice squad for the Patriots against an Eagles defense that refuses to blitz. Now, I get it that the Giants offensive line is not anything you want to write home about by any means, but there may be a pathway or two for simply a guy with no film, like we saw last week with the third string quarterback out there in Gilbert, similar to Fromm, where the Eagles defense is not going to customarily in this situation put 6-7 guys and stack and put Fromm on his back the whole time. They're going to be soft. I know they're going to be soft. That's what they do. So that's all. It's just a small little thing. We'll move on to other positions, but I was just going to say, if you're looking at anybody as far as a long shot, I mean, look, Mac Jones at 21 probably makes more sense. So I'm not going to fight that by any means. It was just a small little thing, only if Fromm's going to start.
Yeah, and I don't really, I don't mind it from that perspective. From a DFS perspective, you're going to a $20 quarterback when there are $34 and $37 quarterbacks on the board. You're saving a massive amount there, and he doesn't need to do a whole hell of a lot to deliver on that price. The issue is there are so many quarterback options that are probably going to vault ahead of that, many of whom have a lot better receivers that you want to pair with. So it just has a cascade effect on what that lineup is going to look like, where I'm going to be forced to play some of the chalkiest expensive players by doing that. You're just going to want to roster the stars. So you miss out on rostering some of those mid-range mix and match type options that help to differentiate a lineup. And then you are extremely differentiated by going to the from play, but it's going with the weakest angle on that differentiation. So like if I was going to a $20 quarterback, I don't know. Does Davis Mills interest anybody? I think he's got a better target, 66.1% game script adjusted passing percentage in a game with a little bit of a better total. So maybe that's the way to go for a cheapo quarterback for the same price at $20. We've seen him succeed in the recent past. We expect that to be at least a game where they're throwing the ball a lot. Any interest there for either of you guys?
No, but you guys have hit on the two defenses I'm going to be talking about when we get to that.
There you go.
There you go.
Nice.
Hey, look, I'm just trying to answer with a $20 quarterback, and I didn't want to go with Zach Wilson. And it's a little thin here.
Here's one guy, and maybe we can meet everybody halfway, where you're not spending up that 37 range and you're not dropping it to $20. But we were all three of us were pretty high just now on the Prize Pick show, and a guy in Joe Burrow, especially from a completion standpoint. $30, you're kind of in that middle range against a weak Baltimore defense. And Emac brought it up earlier about how weak they are normally. Now they're down a bunch of guys. Maybe that's a nice little middle ground there, pardon me, to get with Burrow, Emac.
Yeah, and that one is the way he's breaking out on Yahoo right now. He's got a C in projection and C in value. I think that's going to change and move up once we see where all the value shakes out. But right now, Baltimore is missing about half of their defense. Of their 5 safeties, 2 are out. 1 is questionable. Of their 5 top cornerbacks, 2 are out. 1 is questionable. And then they're missing one of their better rushing defensive ends or lineman and a linebacker as well. And then there's a couple other of the front 7 that are questionable. So they're running on fumes right now. Burrow's got everybody back for all of his top 3 receivers, or everybody available 48 hours before the game, COVID testing, 2 more rounds of that, etc. But he has, a good tight end, a good running back in Mixon, and then 3 really, really good receivers. So I think he's poised to take advantage of this. So he's kind of on my short list of the 3 that I've talked about, between him, Hurts, and then Justin Herbert.
Yeah, that one makes a lot of sense to me for all those reasons too. And I love the idea of getting to quarterbacks who have good weapons on the field, because we're always looking to stack, right? It's kind of the opposite of what I said about Fromm, where I don't love my New York Giants receivers very much. I thought I was going to like them a lot, but hadn't really worked out. But when you go to Burrow, I just really like the core of receiving options that he's got. So I like the stacks that you can build there down through at least the tertiary receiver. The tight end is pretty decent. So I think that's one that makes sense. And then the other one that stood out for $6 less, very similar Yahoo projection, is Derek Carr, who we also talked about on the previous show. It's a lower game total by 4 points or so, but it's tight. It's a 1-point spread, so it should be a tight, highly competitive game. We've got it at a 62.6 pace number, so a pace up spot for Carr, 61.7% game script adjusted passing. So we're expecting them to throw the ball. That kind of passing volume at $24, that's a decent discount from some of the other options. I've gotten burned by Matt Ryan so many times this year that I'm not going to him for $25 this week. So cue the Matt Ryan 350 yards and 5 touchdowns game. But for $1 less, I'm much more interested in Derek Carr here.
That's going to happen. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Let's keep it moving here to the running back slate. And now here's the beauty of it. A lot of the decision-making has been made for us at the top, because we can't get to at least the top 3 guys on the Yahoo slate here. And now all of a sudden, guys become a little more manageable from a cost standpoint. So let's look. We've been talking about Burrow, and you mentioned, Terry, the weapons that we're going to look at from a stack standpoint coming up at the wide receiver position in a minute. But as far as just Mixon himself, it's not as easy of a matchup as the passing game by all means, but I am wondering if you guys are looking at Mixon as an opportunity to where you can still get great productivity in return without spending even above $30 on this slate.
Yeah, I always like Joe Mixon. He's a guy that I get to again and again. I like the success he's delivered this season. Sees all of the relevant snaps on the field. Had 32 touches the last time out. Averages 21 touches a game. Saw 4 targets the last time out. Averages like about 3 looks a game. Just really like him. 4.2 yards per rushing attempt. There's really nothing to dislike about Joe Mixon here. Does a little bit through the air. It's not great involvement in the passing game, but there's a little bit there. For $28, I'm happy to go to Joe Mixon. He projects out well through Alex's numbers. He's not the top guy on the board, but hopefully between the price and not being the most highly projected guy with some of those big time values there, maybe Mixon at the higher price slips under the radar a little bit here. So that's a play that I would definitely be keeping my eye on.
Yeah, and I think with regards to that one, the game log watchers are going to stay away. 3 in a row with single-digit fantasy points. He's only scored 1 touchdown in his last 3, but the 3 prior to that, a pair of touchdowns in each one. So I think he's going to be a decent, option for a touchdown today, because he had in that middle of the season 4 straight games of 23 or more Yahoo fantasy points. It just goes to show what his floor, his potential upside could be there.
Yeah, it shows how fickle those touchdowns are too, and how big an impact those touchdowns can have on a running back's production. Especially
as we erase them, Terry, he's averaging 13.5 Yahoo points in those 4 games if he were not scoring 2 touchdowns a game.
It's amazing the difference. Absolutely. All right, Emac, where else are you targeting running backs here on this board?
Yeah, so you said the decisions are kind of going to be made for you. The 3 most popular are going to be Alexander Mattison, because Dalvin Cook is in the health and safety protocol. We saw on Monday night that their rookie Kenny N, shall we say here, is not quite ready for prime time. They've said that. Now here's a guy heading into Monday Night Football. He didn't play, I think, for the first 8 or 9 weeks of the season, and then they put him in as a kick returner. He has 2 touchdowns on 10 kick returns. That's not counting the last game. So he's very talented. Didn't do a lot of running in college. Was more of a return guy even in college, but a 4-year player. But they saw enough to draft him. I think he was a 4th or a 5th round pick, but he only got 3 carries last week. CJ Ham, 1 target. That was it. So even if Alexander Mattison is not 100% healthy, I don't know if he had COVID or what, but he's still going to get about 80% of the touches in that backfield. I think we're going to want to go there. The price makes him look relatively good, even though it's a difficult matchup against the Los Angeles Rams, who have most of their defense available at this point in time. James Robinson going to be wildly popular going against the Jets. You have him at 26. And last week, I think Darrell Bevell, the interim coach, squandered a potentially winnable game there against Houston. He's got another chance. I think this is basically a pick 'em, even though it's in New York. So he's going to be in the mix. Now, he was dealing, I think it was an ankle injury, but he's expected to play $26. And then if Austin Eckler is out, Justin Jackson is just 12 going against the Texans. Texans are a bottom 5 rushing DVOA, and Justin Jackson does a little bit of everything. He's your punt du jour. So those are going to be kind of the 4 or 5 guys that we've talked about that are going to be your mix and match guys. The last one is Ronald Jones. I've been burned and scarred too many times, Terry, to speak about him rationally. I seem to remember him. Was it against the football team last year? It was either the end of the season or it was in the playoffs. I think it was a Saturday game, and he didn't play. The coach, he didn't feel like it. Or I don't remember what happened, but he just didn't play. And he was on everybody's lineup on that short slate. Since those games, so his last 16 games, counting the 3 games of the playoffs last year, he has in their Super Bowl, he has exactly 0 double-digit fantasy point games. Careful what you wish for here. No Chris Godwin, probably going to have Antonio Brown back, assuming he can find his right ID. And then you've got Gronk, but this is a really thinned out team. So I'm not overly excited about Ronald Jones. I think it's a Trojan horse. I think you let other people assume that risk, but he's the other guy that's really popping there. Terry, I'm curious on your take on it. And then we've got the last one I want to throw out there for you, David Montgomery. Nick Foles has just been announced the starter for Chicago in Seattle on Sunday. So I don't know if I don't think that's bad for Montgomery. I don't know that it's good, but
no,
Nick Foles,
it's neutral.
It's whatevs, but Montgomery's the other guy I'm interested in at 25. What do you kind of like there from Jones and Monty? And I'm sorry, I'm teeing you up for your boy Cordarrelle Patterson too.
Oh yeah, now you got to one that I actually like. Yeah, Cordarrelle's been just so good all through the season, up to $27, going up against that Detroit defense. They're around the average 4.3 yards per rushing attempt on the season. He looks fine. He doesn't look like a standout option. I'll certainly have some. I think it's a 42-point game total, so it's not the monster game total that we might be looking for. Detroit actually looks like their favorite, unless I put this line in backward. Is Detroit favored in that game? 6? No, I'm sorry. It's at Atlanta. It's at Atlanta. Yeah, that's why I was melting my brain to see that for a second. But yeah, Atlanta favored by 6.5. I think there's reason to believe that they'll be running the ball and maybe running the ball into the end zone a little bit, but it doesn't pop off the page as a play like some of the value plays on the board. You mentioned Madison for the $16. Obviously makes a ton of sense outside of the Rams running defense. 3.9 yards per rushing attempt, second best mark on the entire board. So you're running him directly into that. That would be the only cause for concern there for me. I think he's healthy enough if they're going to put him out there that we can go to him. The guy that you brought up, Ronald Jones, no comfort level for me whatsoever with Ronald Jones either. I believe that he's got talent. I believe that he can produce. I just don't know how many shares of it I want, how much of a risk I want to take. That said, over the last 2 seasons, 2019 and 2020, it looks like he did get over 1,000 yards from scrimmage, yards per touch, 5.1, 5.2. So, I mean, he does have the talent to get things done. I wish he was at a better discount. I don't think $18 is necessarily enough of a discount. If he was down in that, that $14 range, especially if he was down in that $12 range, but even take $2 more, put him at the same price as Madison, I might be a little bit more interested. I just don't trust Ronald Jones enough here. Montgomery, I'm fine with. He's just kind of like a mid-range option at that $25 price, and you're running him into the 3.8 yards per rush attempt that Seattle's got there. So that's the best mark on the board. So that would be the only ding to him, but I'd be fine taking some shares of Montgomery, but probably wouldn't go over the field for him.
All right, let's move on to wide receiver spot here. We got a bunch to look at, especially as we brought up a couple of quarterbacks from a stack standpoint. And Cooper Kupp is just the obvious one. Emac brought him up at the start of the show. Not a ton to really get into there. But if you are looking at Cousins, or maybe this is the reverse element of the stack here, where it's like you're going to roster Cousins as a quarterback simply because you really love the matchup, let's say, with Jefferson, $32. So there is a little bit of a break. And even getting to some lineups with Kupp and Jefferson don't seem, Emac, like it's too big of an ask right there. But we talked about Burrow a ton. Jamar Chase is the number one option for Burrow, only $28 really on this. Like, you've got a couple of interesting options here, including Tyler Lockett, who's expected back now with DK Metcalf struggles there, all the way to maybe a sneaky Renfro play at $25 since we brought up Carr earlier. So a couple of options we can get to from a stack standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we let the receiver kind of lead our stack, I think obviously going with the two guys in the Minnesota game with their respective quarterbacks, Stafford and Cousins, is a good way to go. Still don't know what's going on with Adam Thielen. He was questionable going into Monday night, even though he didn't play. He's questionable going into this practice. He's questionable going into this game. I don't think he's practiced as of yet. They've said they will play him without having had practice. But this feels like if he comes back too early, it could be just a decoy type situation, or he's not going to be 100%. Now, I don't think it hurts Justin Jefferson if Thielen is back. It probably helps him just a little bit because at least it's somebody else that's accountable, and he's got good hands. He's not running anything more than short routes, and he's going to catch it and fall over. Thielen, that is. But that's just one more person the Rams defense has to pay attention to, and that just is only going to help Jefferson in my opinion. Jefferson's basically second in almost every category to Cooper Kupp, who took over the lead with 20. The only category Kupp was behind Jefferson in heading into last week was catches of 20 or more yards, and Kupp took that over. He's up to 24. Jefferson didn't have any in the last game. He's still at 22, but Jefferson's pretty much second or third in every other category. So I think he's phenomenal at 32. Deontay Johnson, somewhat interesting at 23. Not a great game in the last one. I think Big Ben had like 150 or 160 passing yards. Deontay, I think he had 5 targets last week. I think all but 3 games he's had double-digit targets. He is, let's see, one of the people that I think is potentially going to go somewhat overlooked. Now, the half PPR on Yahoo doesn't make him super standing out. But if I wasn't looking to put one of the Cincinnati guys who are similarly priced with Burrows, or if I'm not playing Burrows, you kind of start to look at Johnson there just a little bit, because he is the volume should at least be there, and he has some touchdown equity as well. So those would be kind of my core guys in the middle, and then Antonio Brown at 23, assuming he's going to come back. Deontay's a pivot away from him.
Yeah, Brown's a lot of sense, but it's definitely going to be a heavy target for a lot of people. So what about you, Terry, as far as any type of, if it's maneuverability, maybe in that 20 range, or just looking at the top outside of Cup?
Yeah, so in that range that we were just looking at, there's a few of the Cincinnati receivers in the 20s. You mentioned one of them coming off the top. You mentioned Jamar Chase coming off the top at 28. And it was something that I talked about when we brought up Burrow. I just like going to quarterbacks with multiple options, and especially when they come at different price points, right? And I think they're all good receivers of course, varying talents. So you get Chase in that option, in that offense at $28. A couple spots down the board, less than a half a fantasy point away, for $22, I can have T. Higgins. If you go down the board a little bit further, for $15 and only taking 2 and change fantasy points away in the projection, I can have Tyler Boyd. So I'm just going to be mixing and matching and combining a lot of these different pass catching options when I go to the Burrow stack here. And I really like what you can do with those prices. Those are aggressively low prices especially on Higgins and Boyd. And I think 28 is a decent number for Chase and his talents there. I agree with what Emac said about the Deontay Johnson call. I like that one. I think he's going to come up under owned just because people aren't going to Ben very much, and it's just an uncomfortable spot with how lousy he's been for the majority of the season. I love the idea of going to Justin Jefferson, but he's $32, so maybe I dedicate more of these shares. I start looking toward like a Keenan Allen at 27, a guy who pops off the page in terms of where he's projected compared to these other options for the money, and I think for the talent as well. It's just a matter of the quarterback that he's playing with. The offense he's playing in is DJ Moore, a guy who sees easily 10 targets a game. He's averaging 9.4. I made a liar out of myself, but for the most part, he's seeing 10 targets a game.
Close
so 10 the last, yeah, exactly. 10 each the last couple of weeks. He was in the 11, 12 range for a lot of weeks over the course of the season. So I think there's plenty of meat on the bone in terms of targets. If he gets one in the end zone, that's going to be an easy spot to pick off for that $17 price tag. And similar story around Brandon Cooks. I mentioned that Houston passing game earlier with Davis Mills. It's not a spot that anybody likes. It's not a spot that anybody's overly comfortable going to, considering the quarterback, considering the state of that team right now. But when you've got a target monster like Cooks.
Cooks is, I think he's in the COVID protocol.
Oh, did he go in COVID?
Yeah.
Shit. All right. So we still have him on the projection board here. So, all right, scratch Cooks. That's my bet. We'll get him out of the
No, I think it happened this afternoon. There's the latest test results are starting to trickle out today. So
yeah. I saw that a bunch were popping up as we were getting ready.
How fast this stuff changes. So
turning the NFL into the NBA. So all right, scratch the Cooks play there.
Well, cross him off.
Cross him off then. So a guy that I just landed on as I was just kind of clicking down the page here, Odell hiding down for $23. I would expect maybe like more of a 21, like 20. I know I'm nitpicking on the price here. I would expect it to be a little bit lower, but I don't hate the $21 or the $23 price on a guy playing in a game that's got more than a 60% passing lean, and a guy who's, I think, a very, very talented receiver and has gotten a little attention since landing with that team. So I don't mind going to that play, assuming he's not also in the COVID protocols.
You know what's interesting, though, about the whole approach with the Rams each week, and this, as you mentioned, the 60% pass lean, is there's always going to be the cup stack, right, where you play that with Stafford and you roster anybody else, especially if you're going to 2-1 where you're running it back with somebody else. But then the other approach is the Rams stack minus cup, where it's like, that game flow where everybody else, because that would be it. It's either Kupp's going to dominate, or maybe there's focus, or maybe he just has a lower game, what have you, and then everybody else would pick it up. So you could theoretically go with the Kupp stack as one, and then the counter Kupp stack, which would be Beckham and Van Jefferson here alongside Stafford, with the expectation that if Kupp ain't getting it done, then most likely a combination of those other two guys would. And now you're really countering the field there, who's going to get to a lot of Kupp.
Yeah, and we've got a 30% ownership projection on Kupp. So, I mean, he's a phenomenal player. He's a phenomenal play. I've been running a Yahoo crunch in the background here, just spit all over my monitor. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera. It's pretty sweet.
No.
I've been running a Yahoo crunch.
Your cup runneth over.
Wow.
Wow.
All right, that's it. End the show on that one.
Have that sound
we're out of here.
Live. Good, ready to go here.
We'll get the sad trombone.
Oh man, that's amazing.
So in running this this crunch in the background, we had to get out to about 250 lineups with no changes. The only changes I made were forcing a stack, forcing a run back, and limiting players from a single team to two unless they were stacked with the quarterback. So in that configuration, we had to get out to more than 250 lineups before Cooper Kupp came off the board if we're using no randomness, just running quote-unquote optimal lineups. And that was using a whole hell of a lot of Pat Mahomes with Byron Pringle as the primary quarterback receiver stack, getting 100% of Alexander Mattison in as the value play running back, and then building it with some of the other guys that we've talked about around the edges. But that's how frequently Cooper Kupp comes up in these optimizers. That's how strong a play he is despite the price in terms of the projection comparative to other receiving options. But to your point, if you want to leave that 30% ownership on the shelf, you can immediately get differentiated in your Los Angeles stacks by going to an Odell or just throwing Odell into some of these. Take this Pat Mahomes lineup, replace Cooper Kupp with Odell. You've got some savings now to work with. So I could maybe upgrade like a Josh Jacobs. I could upgrade like an Eagles defense. I could upgrade some of these different things. Maybe you want to keep the Eagles defense against my lowly Giants, but you can do some interesting things by making that change where you're saving on ownership significantly and you're saving a lot of salary. So you can upgrade some of these other spots in that lineup. So I just like making pivots within the same stack, within the same offense to a very talented, much lower owned receiver. It's kind of like what I was talking about with Cincinnati.
Yep. So real quick, Emac, I want to get your thoughts on a scenario, and it's kind of on the same vein of what Terry just brought up, and just get a little bit deeper on the wide receiver position. And I think this is an interesting way to kind of look at it with Kansas City. Let's assume Hill and Kelsey are both out. You mentioned Pringle earlier, Terry. So now, Emac, we've got Hardman and Pringle who significantly jump up, we expect, in target shares alongside Mahomes, even in a viable two wide receiver stack if you're going that way here on Yahoo. But both guys are super cheap as well. Hardman 12, Pringle 10. If in fact we'll assume that Hill and Kelsey are out, do you anticipate getting to this type of stack much?
No. And here's why. Do you know how many career games of 100 yards or more Mecole Hardman has?
My guess is a big fat stinking
zero. None. Yeah. Nada. And as much as we've liked him and he's had the opportunities, not the volume, but the concentrated opportunities over the last couple of years, he's just kind of fallen out of favor. It just doesn't seem like it's quite going to happen for him. Is he fine as a punt for $12? Sure. But if Kelsey and Hill are out, let's think about this. How often have we been annoyed by them disappointing, and they're both putting up top three numbers at their position? How do you think these other guys are going to do in their stead? Probably not great. I would sort of lean to Pringle somewhat. He seems like he is on the ascension, but I don't know that either is a phenomenal option. Punting, sure. Getting them in some of your lineups, not a problem. Getting more than 15 or 20%, not on this weekend when there's so many other options. I mean, think of how many bad games that Pat Mahomes has had recently, and we're chasing these guys. Let's be smart on this. I think it's worthy of discussing them, but I think we want to temper expectations. The other thing that's interesting with them, there is a slight chance that Kelsey could get to negative tests. I don't remember which day that Tyreek went in. He may be behind him because their people
You're
started
right.
coming
Kelsey's
in.
Got the better chance. Right.
So Kelsey has a chance of making it out,
yeah.
but I don't know that Tyreek will.
Two things on that. everything you just said about the KC offense makes me want to roster that stack a little bit more. Because I think that's going to be the prevailing thought out there, right? And we're still getting Pat Mahomes. We're still getting, especially with Pringle, a guy who I think is pretty talented. So if people are going away from that for those reasons, I think that's kind of interesting. Because Mahomes is still projecting out very, very well for us. He's expensive, but his receivers are cheap. So we're getting an interestingly configured stack in terms of the pricing. You don't have to go to Mahomes and a Tyreek Hill who also costs $28 or something like that. You can get cheap with going to Pat Mahomes. And if ownership starts getting stripped away from him because of some of those things, I kind of really like that. I think that's very intriguing, actually. If you're not
and
going
to add to that, Terry, you always are correct when it comes up to the leverage. I don't think it's going to be one of those where we're not going to know where it lands until Sunday, so it's hard to tell. But that's an excellent academic point. If people really start thinking about it, like me, we preach nothing but leverage and probabilities here because. Yes, DFS is one big math problem. Life is one big story problem. Wouldn't it have been nice to have DFS as a subject to study in algebra? Yes, absolutely. I probably would have been better at math, but we didn't. But now we get to, and that's where it's important to remember and understand these concepts here. And Terry always does a great job of bringing these up. Eytan does an excellent job of talking about them with parlays and stuff like that as well. So, this is the stuff you want to know. We don't want to talk about our feels and our leans and who used to play for a team and somehow magically is going to do well against them, right? It's fun to talk about it, but come on, we're here to make
He doesn't try for the $8 million. He tries because he hates these guys that he used to play with.
Yes,
that's right.
I always love the revenge narrative. So,
exactly.
Just real quick, does that lead you to any shares if you're not going to the KC passing game? Does it lead you to Edwards-Helaire at all?
No.
Okay, fair enough. Because I saw him popping up a little bit in some of these crunches.
You know what's just so difficult is just no matter what you see week in and week out, it's just so difficult to trust Andy Reid to stick to the run, even if Hill and Kelsey are out. It just doesn't, for me, automatically mean that they're up. And look, if they're up by a ton of points, which is likely against Pittsburgh, I get it, then maybe that plays into it. But even still, it's not an automatic lock that they're just going to run the clock out for the final, 18, 20 minutes of a big lead. So for me personally, there's always that in the back. There's that cloud of doubt in the back of my mind that no matter how much it may just be funneled to Reid to run the damn ball, he still is going to be stubborn and not want to do it.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. The reason I asked is because he's relatively fairly priced. He was coming up a little bit in the crunches in some of the ones where Mahomes didn't get to. So I was just wondering from the thought process if anybody was landing there. But I think I would come down the same.
I don't hate it.
Edwards-Helaire, from that perspective, I don't hate it. Like from a DFS concept wise, I don't hate it. I'm going to go the opposite direction that Emac was just talking about and just kind of inject that. I just don't tend to win with the guy, and he never seems to perform for me, so I don't love it. But it's one that if it comes up in these crunches and they come up and they sort well for me, I'd be happy to take. So I'm going to be curious to see where the shares end up on that one.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else, Emac and Terry? If not, then that's fine. We've got another 10 minutes or so to wind down so we can talk about from the tight ends, defenses, even get back to a couple of stacks we didn't hit on. So is there anybody else at the wide receiver position that you would like to touch on, even if he's a one-off that you're looking in a game that you like the matchup that's not necessarily from a stack standpoint? Emac, Terry?
No, for me, I think we hit it pretty good. I've got a couple tight ends that I think really stand out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We got to hit, including my guy for sure. But I was just curious, mopping up the wide receiver position. That's all, Terry.
Let's see. Yeah, I could always
Amon-Ra St. Brown, Terry. What do you think about him at 16? We've seen a couple good games. Now, quarterbacks, it's not going to be oh God, now I've forgotten his name.
Yeah,
already.
no Goff.
Tim Doyle.
Goff.
Come on.
I was going to say Foles. All I could think of was Foles. And I'm like, isn't everybody traded for each other on all? Yeah.
No Goff, yes to Doyle. That's the simple equation here.
Yeah. But Amon-Ra St. Brown going against Atlanta, maybe. I don't know.
I don't hate that. Yeah, 7 yards per pass attempt for the Atlanta defense, one of the higher numbers on the board here. If we look over in terms of targets, 4 last week, 6.3 on the average. Certainly, there's some ability there. I'd be concerned about the guy throwing him the ball a little bit.
You may get Swift back too, which could complicate targets.
Good point.
Yep, another reason to consider that. A guy that I'm looking at $14 A guy that's popped up a decent amount in recent weeks and, maybe is back off the radar is Jacoby Myers. I know we're not necessarily going to a ton of the Mac Jones stack, but he came up a little bit when we were talking about the cheap QBs. And I think a guy we didn't talk about in terms of the quarterback stack was Josh Allen on the Buffalo side. So I think as a run back play, Jacoby Myers is also going to be pretty relevant at that $14 price if you're going to Buffalo stacks. So just to throw him into the mix, I think he's interesting. Looking down the board, I think if you're going to that Pittsburgh KC game and you don't want to go Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool is always going to be interesting there. Jerry Jeudy maybe as a run back on if you're going to the Carr stack. Like I'm just kind of looking at some of these guys as how they would fit into lineup builds as run back plays. Kenny Golladay certainly for $11 if you're going to the Hurts stack and you need you want a Giants receiver coming back. I think there's a lot of talent in Kenny Golladay for the $11. Has it delivered for the Giants money this season? Certainly not, but I believe it's still in the body. So maybe you get to him. If you're going to the Buffalo stack, Emmanuel Sanders has been under-owned for his talents all year long. $14 on the board, probably a fair price for what he's delivered this season. But I think he's just a guy who's just not gotten any love from the public whatsoever. So you can always pick him off at like 5% ownership. I'm not looking at the actual number, so don't quote me on that. But I think at that price, he would probably make some sense.
Sounds great. All right. So we're winding down here. A couple of minutes left or so for tight ends. We'll touch on, because Emac already mentioned he's got 2 defenses that he wants to get to. But I'm curious. You guys
I don't even have defenses in my spreadsheet.
Don't worry. You can
15%. The chips fall where they may, Terry. The chips fall where they may.
That's it exactly.
So I'm curious, though. You guys are actually the perfect 2 individuals on our entire network here to ask this question. There's nothing going on. They canceled that Hawaii Bowl and no sports today. We have to wait for the NFL, the NBA, everything to pick up tomorrow. So you have all the time in the world to do absolutely nothing today. Give me your go-to Christmas holiday movie that you can sit down for 3 straight viewings. Now, granted, nature calls, that's it. But you would be like under a camera and microscope. You can't leave the couch. So don't throw something out just because it's a cool answer. We're going to hold your feet to the fire and make sure that you could legit sit and watch this movie 3 times in a row. Terry?
I will go with the easy, obvious meatball. I'm going chalky on this one. I'm taking Christmas Vacation off the board. I did it at Thanksgiving. I literally watched it twice in a row the day after Thanksgiving because they had it on 24 straight hours on TBS. So with commercials, the day after Thanksgiving, I watched it 2 times in a row. So I'm confident I could do that again.
Wow.
I'll take that. Emac?
Yeah, I would agree. It's gonna be Christmas Vacation. That would be the one.
Really? You can't give me another one? There's like,
well, I'm gonna say I don't
here.
mind Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. That's kind of a Christmas movie.
Yes, it is.
Uncle
that's
Buck
a Christmas movie.
is kind of a winterish type movie. I think those are fine. And then
Christmas Story?
I couldn't watch it 3 times. Oh God, I can barely watch it all once, but probably It's a Wonderful Life, or at least the last 30 or 40 minutes of It's a Wonderful Life. Maybe the first 20 minutes and the last 40 minutes of a 2 hour and 30 minute movie.
Tyler's mocking suicide and disgust at that choice in our video window here. God,
yes,
he did not like that one.
With that,
it's a classic.
This isn't like when
you know Miracle on 34th Street, either the original or the most recent remake in the 90s, not that crappy one that they remade in the 70s. That was horrible.
I imagine I'm not looking at chat right now, but I imagine chat is just the words die and hard just over and over and over again because everybody
no Die Hard.
Bad Santa, Jingle All the Way. I haven't seen
Bad Santa is good. Bad Santa good.
Funny, yeah. Jingle All the Way, very underrated Christmas movie. Die Hard. Look, Die Hard is as much of a Christmas movie as Planes, Trains is. So those 2, I think, are very underrated ones.
Yeah.
All right, look, nobody's going to fault you for choosing 30 minutes of a movie, but
I mean, come on, John Candy, Steve Martin. Do you know how cold it is? So he turns and looks at him. 1. When they're driving and he turns into the devil.
You're going the wrong way. How would he know where we're going?
Who was that? Was that Zucker Brothers? Was that a Cohen special? Who? Or was that Harold?
No,
that
was what's his face? From he wrote everything. John Hughes.
Hughes, yeah.
John Hughes. Okay.
Mhm.
Got it. Just curious. All right, let's hit a couple of tight ends. Just wanted to make sure if anybody out there was looking for a movie suggestion. The reason why I say 3 times in a row is not because either or both of these guys are going to go watch that 3 times in a row, but you know from 2 movie buffs, they're going to give you a suggestion that's really going to come from the heart here. All right.
Hey, and if anybody's looking to binge a series, just real quick, I'll bang it out real quick. Yeah. If anybody's looking to binge a series that you haven't started yet, The Expanse. It's on Amazon. All 6 seasons. They're just started season 6. They're like 2 or 3 episodes into it. It's a sci-fi show. It's fantastic. People call it Game of Thrones in space. It's not really what it is, but it's somewhat along those lines. Just a lot of politics and a lot of like different groups of people. There's Earth, there's Mars, there's the asteroid belt, and they all go to war with one another. It's a fantastic show that nobody watches.
There you go. And now is the day. Today's the day to take advantage of that, by all means. So thank Terry. If you're deep in The Expanse 3 seasons before you blink, let's look at the tight end spot. We'll assume Kelsey is out here because clearly if he's playing, then that's the go-to. There's a no-brainer with that. You can counter ownership all you want here on Yahoo, but let's assume that Kelsey's not playing. And now you have Mark Andrews. Clearly, we have to figure out what's happening in the quarterback situation there. If Huntley's trending, that could impact. 2 guys are down for Tom Brady to throw to. So now all of a sudden, Rob Gronkowski at $24 makes some sense. But let me just stick up for my guy here in the sense of Dallas Goedert. You saw that last week against Washington. There are plenty of opportunities for this Eagles offense to just turn him into a number 1 receiver and feed him the ball. The Giants defense is atrocious. Sorry, Terry. But I think Goddard more so than anybody else on the Eagles, if you were looking to stack somebody else with Hurts, and we're getting to Hurts a lot, I would just stick up for Goddard, especially since you're saving $6 to $4 with that. But let's look at it that way. Emac, I know you have a couple of guys, Terry as well, at the tight end spot.
Yep. So you hit on the 2 main ones. Dallas Goedert at I think he's at 20. Yep, he's at 20. So even if Jalen Hurts is ruled out with his ankle issue, Gardner Minshew was actually under center when Goddard had his best outing of the season in Week 13 when he had 105 yards and 2 touchdowns on 6 catches. Last week with Hurts under center, he had his second consecutive 100-yard performance. Then you've got Mark Andrews, and Mark Andrews is top 8 in the league, not tight ends, in the league with 122 targets, 1,062 yards and 8 touchdowns, and his 85 catches ranks 10th. He is basically having the Travis Kelce season of last year.
So for me, I'm with you on those guys in terms of their talent and all of those things. The concern for me on both of those guys is the ownership projections we've got on them. Both of those guys projected around 20% ownership. They're going to be coming up quite a bit because they're probably everybody's favorite receiver for those 2 quarterbacks that I think a lot of people are going to be looking to play. So there's a little bit of concern there, or there's a little bit of concern on that. 2 guys who are lower owned that are coming up quite a bit for me, Rob Gronkowski, who Eytan mentioned off the top, primary weapon for Tom Brady. Everybody kind of forgot how much he loves to throw touchdowns to Rob Gronkowski, I think, coming into this season. And Gronk for the year, averaging 6.9 targets over the last 4 games. He's seen either 8 or 9 targets in all 4. So a lot to like there, especially with other weapons coming off the board for them. So that's one I'm definitely interested in taking a look at. And then beyond that, it's really just a mix of, the other guy that came up a lot was Kyle Pitts. I mentioned not wanting to go to the Matt Ryan combination very often, but Pitts, for all his talent, he's at a reasonable $17 this week and only a 12% ownership projection. So if we're shaving down the ownership by going to that for cheaper, I'm intrigued by that. Maybe I get him without going to the Matt Ryan play, although it looks like it came up a little bit. Matt Ryan and Russell Gage came up a decent amount as well. Outside of those guys, it's kind of a mix and match board. A lot of guys just came up in, I capped it at 15% for tight ends. A lot of guys landed in that 5, 6, 7% range. So in there, we've got like Dawson Knox, Hunter Henry, Jared Cook, Tyler Higbee, all guys I'm happy to get to, Noah Fant, all guys I'm happy to get to. A lot of guys that just kind of go along with their stack or fit in just, I've got X to spend, I can plug in this tight end.
Real quick, because I know, Emac, you want to end with a couple of defenses, but Stephen Leibowitz on chat throughout Camp Brate. So Terry, Emac, if you have, and again, this may be just a simple pivot away from Gronk. I love him as far as a sneaky anytime TD play, but that's a bet. That's not relying on him to carry my DFS lineup.
I don't mind that. Looking at the targets, 4 last time out, 4-1 the week before that, 4 and 6, and then 3, saw 4 a couple times while Gronk was out. So I don't mind that call, and especially with that just weird TD upside. And Brady also does like to throw those weird TDs and keep guys involved. So that's definitely one that could be on the board and would definitely be sneaky to the field at large. So I like that call. It's pretty good.
Yeah, probably looking at a ceiling of around 11, but if you get that at $10 and the other guys get 14, 15, 16, 17, not going to kill you because you're going to have a different line of construction and ideally make up the points elsewhere, potentially at defense.
All right. Take us home, Emac. Couple of defenses to keep an eye on.
All right. Philadelphia Eagles. They're not great on defense. You're absolutely right. They have the same Seattle philosophy. Bend, don't break. Did you know Seattle is allowing the 6th fewest points in the league this year? That seems shocking, allowing a boatload of yards, but not scoring. But for me, it's going to be the Eagles going against Jake Fromm, who's just announced the starters. At this point in time, the Eagles currently have 20 of their 22 two-deep players available. Can't say that about that many teams out there. Continuity, I guess, because a lot of teams are missing, a third of their two deep. And then the other one is going to be the Chargers at Houston. Davis Mills has only been sacked 5 times in the last 3 games. He has just 1 interception. However, 4 starters and their top backup tackle are all in the COVID protocol for Houston. So let's go Bolts.
Probably a good call. Davis Mills, my quarterback not my active quarterback, but I drafted him in like the 6th or 7th round of our dynasty league this year, and when we were only drafting rookies, so that maybe that one pays off a little bit when everybody was excited about some of these other high end quarterbacks. I have nothing really to contribute about defense.
Mike Glennon is not working in that league, but I did pick up the Baltimore guy today. So.
Sharp. Yeah, I actually have to make sure everybody's in for my team. I think they're all playing, but playoffs. I got to actually pay attention. I had the bye last week, not to pat myself on the back.
No, I had the bye too in the Awesemo C League, but then I realized 3/4 of the league isn't even checking their lineup. So I don't even know what to take from this.
That always helps. I had 2 weeks. The dynasty one is a super flex, and I had 2 weeks where I had no second quarterback starting. And fortunately, neither did the other person I was playing. I got really lucky twice. Just looking real quick at how the crunch came out with the defenses. Like Emac said, I cap it at 15% and just kind of let fly, give everybody some randomness, and I'll take it. Brings the cream to the top. The top end, the guys that hit 15, the Eagles, the Chargers, the Falcons, the Seahawks, and the Raiders were all over 14, between 14 and 15. So that would probably be my core of defenses, and then I'll take whatever values and other teams I get.
Got it. All right, look, man, this was awesome. We appreciate you all out there hanging with us for the last 90 minutes. Thanks to Awesemo for letting us do this. And I have to say, a lot more content than I expected. I thought the 3 of us would be deep into some Scorsese rabbit hole like 20 minutes into the first show. But we all stayed on point, which gives me hope that the 3 of us can do this again now, moving forward and make it a staple.
They might let us.
Exactly right. Make sure you're following at Digital D21, at Emac DFS for Terry and Emac on Twitter, respectively. I'm at Shander Show. Thanks to Tyler for producing. Look, those links below, before you get out of here, make sure you click them. $10 free just to play with. You can get in that $1 million jingle baller for only $1, $100K to first place. And if you're brand new to Yahoo, we're going to give you that free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Hope everybody has a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I hope everybody gets what they're asking for. Terry, Emac, I hope Santa gives you guys what you've been asking for all year. A new car, right?
Yeah, fortunately, I only want Cole.
Cole, be careful.
It worked out really well,
for, man.
Works out.
You set your expectations that low?
Exactly, and then I can behave however I want throughout the year without worrying about it. It's perfect. Been doing that since I was a kid. Man.
Congrats on your new Porsche, Emac, for Christmas.
Looking forward to it. I'm actually getting a new Fitbit. That I'm on Fitbit 2. Apparently, they're on Fitbit 5 now.
Nice.
So I think it's time for an upgrade.
Awesome. Well, congrats, brother. Thanks again to everybody. We appreciate you hanging with us. Again, hit that thumbs up button if you haven't, and have a great holiday Christmas weekend.